if I move to instance number 3, I have the perspective of the auditor. I can refresh my dashboard and see that the numbers about total emissions of the supply chain are increased because this dashboard is aggregating all the emissions which are propagated to the service ask, and I can have any kind of KPI or report regarding my supply chain. So for example, I can see that there are different views on bids by suppliers, or that I can do an aggregation of the bids for specific service ask, or also the ask by state on the supply chain. This data can be actually be drilled down. So if I click on the matched part of the service ask, I get exactly the same information, which the only difference that the auditor here has only read access to this information. So if I order again by creation message, I have my production machine service ask here, and you can see already in the list view that the emissions and the cost of the bid that has been accepted have been propagated to the service ask level. Of course, you can interact with the AppNet not just from the classic UI, you can interact also from the service portal, for example. So as a customer, I can place my service ask from the supply chain category, and I can request to create a service ask to the supplier network. This can be something like 20 user experience experts, and it's very simple, but can be as complex as we want. And if we submit that, the service ask is created, and is created initially with the submitted state, but you can see that when the message arrive, you have the state changed to active, and you have the visibility on the messages as well. Exactly in the same way, you can represent supplier one, for example, and you can do your bid from the service portal. And in this case, you have a catalog item that is place service bid, where you can select the data like local data, but this is actually AppNet data. And here you see all the service asks which are in the active state. This is the one I want to bid for, and this is going to be bid by a supplier one for a cost of 100K and estimated emission of 777 tons. And I can submit what this submission produce. Of course, in the service ask table of every instance, I'm going to have my service ask with exactly the same structure of messages and the bid placed under that ask, so I can progress in exactly the same way with that process. This concludes the demonstration about AppNet and the procurement process, and let's go back to the slides for a few takeaways. Okay, let's conclude with 3 takeaways from today's session. First of all, we have demonstrated how a decentralized market for e-procurement is possible using ServiceNow and Hedera, and leveraging the Now platform as the layer 2 technology for the layer 1 DLT. Secondly, we have implemented the first AppNet model in ServiceNow that can be generalized to any situation where a shared business model and multi-party workflow is required. Finally, we have shown how local processes like purchase order management can be seamlessly connected to the shared business process of the AppNet, making this capability even more powerful. Thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed today's session.